Just real quick, I wanted to go back to the Post-its last week. Unlike we did last week, but we did Post-its a few weeks before. And I wanted to go back to that because I feel like it gives us more time to reflect, and everybody can have like that equal voice. And I just felt like it was a good way to kind of get an idea from everyone. So today we are going to
what do we do?
Yeah. So today we're going to do our data dive for ELA, and I'd like for us to start by just reviewing our team agreements. And I want to encourage you to pick a different one to kind of hold on to today as we work together than you did last week. Karen, which one are you resolving to do today?
I think for me it's sharing in and accepting struggles, because we're looking at ELA data and talking that, but that's for all of us. So.
Good. Brittany?
I'm going to go with listening, because I feel like last week I did a lot of the speaking, and so I just want to be accepting of others' ideas.
Okay.
I picked the one that Karen did, but I'll do a different one since it's maybe seeking resolution. We know we've been talking about the same standards, so looking at the data and determining what we can do differently for our kids to reach their goals.
Yes. And I'm going to go with owning the success of all students. It really kind of relates to what Karen was saying, just taking ownership of all of them together and their success. So, all right, so we're going to move forward, and let's take a look at our agenda. You all have a copy of that. Just we're used to this data dive cycle now, but we are going to start with the assessment discovery. What do they need to know, and then move into reviewing the data from that assessment and maybe digging a little deeper if the conversation lends itself that way. And then we're going to talk about our standard of focus, and then set a student goal and set a teacher goal with new learning for us in the end. So now that we're ready to begin, we're going to start with the assessment discovery. So on the students on Friday took an assessment on SchoolNet, and we pulled the standards from this 9 weeks. So let's just kind of talk for a second for ELA what the students are expected to know and do. And Medina, it'll lay heavily on you and I, but we can kind of hold that conversation. So do you want to start?
Yeah, so I know when we first started, we picked that AKS 5, and we spent a lot of time with it, and like you were just saying, this one really focused in on I think there's eight AKS that we focused in on for this, so that's quoting accurately, determining theme, comparing and contrasting characters. I mean, it's really all of it. Everything we've done these past 7 weeks.
Right. And it also pulled in some of the writing AKS with quoting accurately. They had to pull some of that information into. But really, this assessment expected students to know the first 9-week AKS, because we've really taught everything. And right now we're in that review phase. So I know you guys are doing some of the ELA work in your classes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Really with math, we're really doing it throughout all subjects, but just with math especially, trying to incorporate more mathematical literacy. So what that looks like is students reading, writing, and speaking. And so we try to incorporate that a lot through conversation. And I know now in CQI we're modeling what that effective conversation looks like. And also talking about or doing the writing piece, explaining their thinking a lot when they're solving a problem. So that's where the literacy in math mostly comes in. And then also in science and social studies, they're doing a lot of integration of writing. So
Good.
explaining their thinking and comparing and contrasting a lot, especially with science. So we're bringing in a lot of those skills and with writing and science and social studies.
Okay, awesome. So really, students are being exposed to the ELA everywhere. So for this, what are students expected to know? I'm going to summarize by saying first 9 weeks AKS. Are you guys in agreement with that? Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is evaluate the data from this assessment. And Medina has Ontai and Kovacevic pulled up. And then I have over here pulled up. So what I want you to do is use your Post-its for just a second. And you're going to kind of just play around with what you're seeing. And what we're going to be doing is evaluating the work that is on this assessment. So we're looking for trends and patterns, and then we're also looking for opportunities. So let's take just a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, to kind of mine through this data together. Yeah, you can talk. Yes, you can talk.
So it's like AKS 3 is really high.
That's
Very
right.
contrasting. I mean, and that's
So-
2 items on it, and they did hire both.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Voting at 3.
Comparing and contrasting.
Where do you see the actual? I know you see the number.
Oh, the AKS is right here, but like I think I just
You know
remember.
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But if you need,
What is item 5, because that's super low.
that's
Item 5
4.
is definitely super low.
Well, 5 is item 4.
Click on it.
Oh, item
Yeah.
5. Yeah, that's AKS 4. So that's what we're working on.
That's determining meaning of words and phrases
Yeah.
within a text. And as you guys write on your Post-its, just know we're going to post them up in just a second and kind of share. So just kind of keep a stack of it.
Yeah. Is that 30% is even lower?
I'm gonna say 4. That's still part. That's
Okay.
item 5. That's still that same.
Well, that's good to know that it's at least consistent.
Yep,
Uh-huh.
yep.
What'd you put?
I was just thinking, I went and looked at that question and just
AKS 2,
looking at
that's
what
determining theme. Here's 77.
the question is. Like, that's a word I think a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
think
them
that
know,
boils
and I
down
should
to
see
the
why they would
question.
pick
Type
it
of question.
patiently, but I think knowing
Knowing
that
that
words
for
have
that, I
different
would
shades
think
of
it's
meaning
helpful to
depending
look
on
at
the
the
context.
question.
Like,
Yes.
they really have to
Can we
read
look at
it
the
in
question?
the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna ask you words that you kind of know, but they want you to see if you can use the context.
You could
Figure it out. So I think that's an opportunity. Can I write that down?
Please, yes.
Yeah.
I think that's
Item 2.
so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Because that was the most common.
And there were
And I did the other.
both of the questions for that standard. There were 3 questions for that
This
standard,
one's summary.
but they are
Okay,
2,
so it's a little
and they
different
both
than
were
themes.
asked
Well,
the
it's part
same
of
way.
the same
The other one was, I
determining
think,
the theme of a thing and
maybe it was
summarize the passage
sympathetically.
is all part of it.
They had to determine. I can't remember.
That second question was which important
I
details.
thought that's missing.
Wait, so summarizing is the
Four.
high?
I don't know. I
Higher?
could be wrong.
Summarizing was the higher one, yes.
Okay.
And theme was the lower one.
This is low.
And the one about the important details.
And this is going to be the same kind, sympathetically.
Important detail is missing.
That was item 12. That's part of it. That was the deep one.
Meant to be.
And no, that was summary too. I'm sorry. Read the summary of the passage. Which important details missing.
This one's pretty high.
Yeah.
Both were
Those are both
summary.
compare and
Okay,
contrast.
good.
But
What is this?
But
that's
one
one?
was
about
higher.
detail.
Right.
Important detail is
Oh, that's
Oh,
perspective.
And I can tell you why.
Oh,
This is
good.
12. We're not counting that one because they didn't have the passage. So the reason they didn't know which
That's
details were
good.
missing was
That's
because they
all
didn't
they
even have
said.
the passage. They
Okay.
just had the summary. So
So that's good.
okay, that makes there we go. And let's go back.
I'm going to put narrators.
Did we ever look at what the 38?
That's the one that we can't count because they
So
didn't have
Okay,
the passage.
what about
It's like
that
the
one?
same,
Then it's
same
30%.
quote accurately from text.
All right. So 1, quote accurately, 1 is literary text and 10 is informational
Right.
text.
That they can do it.
It's determining
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yes.
that's-
Yes. For
For
whatever reason, their nonfiction comprehension is significantly
But-
higher, and we're going to talk about that.
Pityingly?
but,
Are they expected to know what pityingly means?
but it's use of context clues and, I mean, knowing what's around in the text, the process of elimination. So, like, frown angrily. I don't know, that doesn't make sense. I don't know, I feel like the kids would be able to use the
Is
process
this,
of
is
elimination.
this, okay, it's part of a passage, right?
Mhm. So
Um,
context clues.
Yeah,
I
they
feel like
shouldn't
they
have
should be
picked
able to-
angrily, sadly, or
Exactly.
suspicious.
2
But I'm
minutes.
thinking the reason that they might have picked that is because they didn't
They
know
weren't
what
sure
it
what that is.
means.
But then it goes
All
back
those
to
questions we
understanding,
those are the ones we
like,
off the
using our
passage, so we
context
couldn't
clues
even
and
count
being
those.
aware
It's
of,
kind of
like,
frustrating.
process of elimination, like understanding if I replace that word, it doesn't make
But there's that
sense.
same
Like, it, you know what I mean?
AKS.
And that's what we're talking about in our
It's
lesson
just
this
They
week.
might actually pity.
What kind of means might, right? But even if they didn't, using the other
Using
word
the-
and trying to figure out
Process of
because like
another
most common error is
being
sadly
worked
because of this
Mhm.
frowned.
So they got sad.
They thought
So
immediate
I
right.
put
I mean
theme
that's
as an
what
opportunity.
Well, I mean, I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate
It's
here.
not
Like,
themed, though.
they are using the context
question.
clue when they are.
absolutely.
And,
But
and of course,
doesn't
I
make
don't know
sense.
the rest
Right.
of the story, but
Right.
I am thinking like they
Right.
are trying to use
Absolutely,
context
no.
clue, so that's a good thing.
Absolutely, but just using it correctly and
Yeah.
reading more of the text to figure it out. What have we done? Trends, opportunities. Oh,
I'm trying to think. There's some
I think one thing that we were talking about is maybe focusing on, so we looked at AKS 2, which is determining the theme, story, and summarize the text, but we realized that
I'm
both
gonna
of the
put
questions
theme.
were for summary and for
summary.
They weren't about theme.
They weren't about theme, so
Okay, so that would
we
be
need
an
to make sure,
opportunity.
yeah.
1 minute.
How do you want me to phrase that? Work on question 15.
Oh yeah, and this is what they were just talking about. AKS 1 and 5 are both quoting accurately, but AKS 1 is literary text and AKS 5 is informational. And we don't get into informational until
Were
Second
y'all's,
time.
I'm interested though, our informational quoting accurately was higher than literary. Was
Mine
yours?
was
The opposite.
mine's 80,
Wow.
85% versus 77.
Wow.
Literary,
Wait, I
informational.
thought you said it was this one.
Oh, sorry, 69.
69.
69.
So it's
84 or
very,
69.
it's like
A big
almost
difference.
20% difference.
Wow. So your 1 is higher than your 10.
Oh, but look, but still, hold on, there's 3 questions on that, on 10. On AKS 10, one's 70%, one's 80, and one's
Right.
62.
Right.
Well, overall, it's
Overall,
lower.
it's lower than
all of those are lower
Huh.
than the literary ones.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys come up and let's put our thoughts up here and then we'll kind of summarize together. They're going to go in this top part, so you have to squeeze them in.
Was there an opportunity?
Yeah. No, that was the trend we noticed.
Put up above it if you need to. Perfect, perfect. Okay, so we have for trends and patterns under this assessment, we have quoting accurately. For nonfiction, we talked about that was for our team was pretty high. Narrator's point of view perspective was nailed it, right? So determining the meaning of words and phrases, you guys were at 23, I think we were at 18%. So that was kind of the big red flag. AKS 3, compare and contrast, done well. Here you wrote significantly lower. It was the same thing for the fiction. Summarizing is the higher part of the standard. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
She was
So
talking about
theme.
theme, that the standard was theme. Well, and at first we were looking at 2 different questions, and we realized with the they did pretty well with the summarizing question. When we looked at the question, and
Okay.
they were asked to summarize, they did well with that.
That's
There's no question on theme. Neither of those questions for that AKS had anything to do with theme.
Right. That's what I wrote as a as an opportunity, was because theme, the standard, they were assessed on summarizing. And that it's just that little tag on the end of the standard that says summarize after that big long thing about determining themes and character responses, and then quoting accurately. Nailed it. Okay, so opportunities. Summarizing would be one. We have context clues, using those correctly. That's really good. Work on questions to help students determine theme. Okay, and then determining the meaning of words. Oh, I love this. Karen put shades of meaning depending on context. So a word can have like, I love that word, shades, different shades depending on how it's used in the context, and identifying details that would not, or that would fit in a summary very good, and more determining meaning. So it looks like we have a very kind of bright opportunity here. Does anybody feel like they want to move in a certain direction to dig a little deeper with this, with our opportunities? What do you guys think?
I think either one would be good, either context clues or summarizing. I feel like we could incorporate it in science, social studies, math, either
Yes.
way.
Yeah, because one of their questions was actually plant animal cell.
Right.
Did you see that? So they had to determine the meaning of something.
Mm-hmm.
So since the data shows that determining meaning of words and phrases is where we need a good bit of attention, let's kind of zoom in a little more closely. So today, honestly, it just lend itself to this because we're working on this in ELA. So today, our students use strategies like context clues and words, looking in the word and around the word and using background knowledge and things like that. So what I'd like for us to do is just to dig deeper. So we're going to have a part B for student work, and we're going to look at their journals from today, and they've all put like Post-its in it so you can turn to it real quick. And let's do trends and patterns on that and see what we notice. Maybe we can discover a really good opportunity that'll help us grow. So let's do 5 minutes with this as well.
That's okay. So let's start with a couple of years and then we can.
I want to do this together.
Okay.
Give us some
Okay.
context.
Just
So,
so that we can.
it's words
It's
or
two
phrases.
eyes,
so
not
we're
just-
doing specifically summaries and metaphors. And so a lot of my kids pulled out
So
like maybe a piece of the
what they
written
had to do was
language,
find a word or a
that,
phrase, show this
was
in
unknown,
that was
or
used
that they
in,
wanted to figure out the actual
talk
meaning.
about
So they had
words
to take
that
that word or phrase,
were
write
either in the
sentences
word
in,
or
talk
around
about
the word,
things in the
and
word,
then what they thought
around
the
the
actual
word, and
meaning.
then what the actual meaning is.
We're like copying each other.
Yeah, I mean,
This
right?
is Alvin.
Yeah,
So,
what?
the
Today
word
when you showed me, I
oyster.
was like, yeah.
And it says
Should be like
old
this.
black
So, like,
beard's chest looked like a
the
giant
storm was
oyster
an angry
that had
It's a
opened
powerful storm.
It was a powerful
shell
storm, but like
to
just going through it, so
spew
like
out
attacking the
all it
ship,
held within it.
storm, dragon,
So it could be
attacking the
messy.
angry ship. So he's realizing like that it was powerful. All those words, negative, angry, dragon, right?
It's
So I mean, we look and see how we did on here because I think that's what we.
that would be
we
in the
wanted to
word, but
see
see,
what the difference-
I teach them that in the word is word parts,
So what question
like
was that?
prefixes, suffixes. So this
Item 5, right?
maybe an opportunity would be more work on.
And it was the same one with like
Word
the
parts.
synthetically one. So he's got that. So maybe just
Root words, suffix.
focusing specifically on words. Like he's got when it comes to phrases that reach the vocabulary, using the same knowledge when it comes to unwritten
Where it
words,
gets messy
right?
from.
Yeah.
I think because it said it spewed out all that it held within. Maybe that's where. So around the word. The pirate likes stealing gold from other pirates.
So this is Brandon.
Also, maybe just like part of speech too.
Oh,
So
connecting part of speech.
been doing that in
And what
mentor
is it?
sentences. I don't know.
In the wind. So like
He did it because
I realize he
mess
doesn't.
is a
Like
thing
he is
and
literally
oyster is a
thinking
thing, but
that the wind is blowing
I don't know
his
if they'll
message,
all
but
be like that. But that
that's
just
not the
made me
case.
think
It's
when
just
we were
it's
talking about
powerful form.
prefixes
So
and suffixes.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
like
Okay.
he's literally, it's not the actual meaning. It's like
Right. But I'm wondering though, like, I want to see an example with
Yeah.
words, because these are
Yeah, they're all-
phrases.
Clues
still
around
not
the word.
gonna be
He's
very
making
good.
inferences.
So,
Outfox.
oh,
Do you
outfox,
see
yes.
that?
Okay, let's look
Yeah.
at this
He's
outsmarted.
stealing
Outsmarted
from
it quickly, but like
he likes to be
suffix
rich.
oh,
None
so
of
they
these are
use like
coming
this.
from right
The
around
quick
here.
metaphor
Like
outfox
giant
giant. So this student
Right,
clearly
he's making
knows
opening its
inferences.
shell.
what that word is, but
Probably
let's look
from
through a couple
background
more ones.
knowledge.
No.
Yeah.
Somebody else could have been the pirate. So,
The
are
terminology
we
in cards,
saying
really good,
that
fast, quick? Those are words.
he needs to look immediately right around the word?
Yeah. Right.
For this student, yeah, probably. He needs to start as close to the word
Yeah.
as
Hold on.
he
Go to
can.
the page before. Hold
So, I'm going to say zoom in.
on. Okay. Okay. Oh, here's one. Glimmering.
Shiny.
Okay. What did he say? So Katie walked like a
The,
golden glow spotlight. Okay. Yeah. So
And
we use
friends
those words
versus
within,
or
around.
the difference between
Yeah.
because I know you
Exact
have
text
the-
evidence versus
Yeah.
inference.
So it kind of goes back to what you were saying. Like
Yes.
it's knowing some of those words, but
show
just being
you.
able to use. I feel like talking about process of elimination, looking at the words that don't make sense. But you're right, frowned and sadly. You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're
So
clearly
this one is a
doing
class
a
example,
good
so
job
I
of
would
going through the process.
Either
This
right here.
process
Yeah.
of,
And the thing is,
Using
they took
context
this. Right.
clues.
Right.
I mean, it's not that they're not doing it. You
Mhm.
can clearly see they're doing a good job here.
He nailed it.
So
Mhm.
where's
So
where's the disconnect?
Science.
Well, we took this on Monday, and we didn't do this lesson until today. So, and this is what I was reflecting with Jenn, you know, thinking like next time, I
So
feel like
use
this
nonfiction
like,
features.
hit it so well
Mhm.
after
We use features to help you with
But
that.
it's an ACAS we focused on this week, and I think doing this now, if they were to look back at that question, they were to be like,
I would hope so.
because I mean, we were just talking about like we're looking through this and
It's
they've
really
got the
good
process, yeah, like
It's really good
you
work.
know.
We've got some that.
Well, we've looked through a couple that need some support, but I think this really helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
This is really
So this
really
one,
good.
he's got it. Let's look at one of yours.
But yeah, there's a couple there.
Okay.
It's kind of just the same.
I have a green one right there that you just put in front. Yeah.
An angry dragon. See, they were using the same passage. An angry
This
dragon.
is.
Yeah.
Wager.
If you're, friendly at the
Wager.
question that they did, I
So he did come to me and ask
So,
me
think
within
that
the word.
Passages
the
that have
rigor
like
needs to be
and
stepped up
I
a
said,
little bit, just because
right.
Your
like I
knowledge
think
of
about that
this
word
word. Do you
repeatedly,
see
and I'm
any
like,
prefixes or
I don't know.
suffixes?
they know what
Yeah.
that word
And he
means,
said
Right.
to me,
Right.
I think wager is all one word.
and you can tell
Yeah.
a
And I
lot of
said,
them
well,
did.
We,
Yeah,
there
yeah,
are
yeah. Oh, yeah,
wages.
with the
to-
frown and sadly, yeah.
So,
And I said,
That's
so
something to keep in
wage
mind.
is the
Definitely.
root, and we did have that conversation, but he didn't record that in there.
Really wants the treasure. Valuable to
Background knowledge. So he's talking about character perspectives. It's time to go. I guess the bell about to ring.
Yeah, we have to be done.
fire drill.
Oh,
Okay. So, can we come back to it? I know you can.
I'll join in.
So we have looked at student journals and we came up with a few things that we were noticing. So trends and patterns, we said that with phrases they were doing well. We noticed that it was significantly different when they were doing just a word and pulling that out of their text. They're showing their thinking to determine a word. We also noticed, and we didn't write it down, but we also noticed that they were including a lot of inferencing instead of exact text evidence that would support.
We did. We put it under opportunities.
Opportunities. Okay, there we are.
It's on that word.
It is on it. That's great. So we talked about, yes, just that, like teaching them that it's okay to make inferences, but you have to have the exact evidence to support that in that meaning. And then connecting parts of speech. Then
We said, so this is something Brittany brought up, which totally makes sense, but like looking at the questions that were on there and the way that it was asked, but even the words, we realized that the rigor and the complexity of it was way higher than
Than what
maybe
they were
what we
doing in
had.
their journal.
Yeah, so maybe when we think about text we're pulling, making sure that they're just as rigorous and complex as these
What was
other.
the
Yeah.
word?
really good.
Sympathetically, and then that
But the
answer
word
was
was hard,
pityingly.
pityingly was the
As it goes back to that shades.
Yep.
How it can
understanding.
have shades.
Did you pull a text for them to do this with, or did they do it with
Yes.
their book?
Both.
Okay.
Both. They started with a passage that we provided, and then they moved into their selected texts. All right, and then we have talking more about vocabulary and word parts. I think that word work is going to be really powerful with all of this. Some of our noticings where they still don't know what parts of a word are. Like when you ask them, is there a prefix? What's the root? They can't really tell you. And then I love this idea. It said connecting parts of speech with meaning. So when they're listing out possible meanings for that word, looking at that and saying, is it a noun? Is it a verb? Which one makes sense based on the part of speech? That was a really good connection. So now that we have evaluated the student work, sorry, that way it doesn't cover it up, we're going to move into looking at this just real quick. So we noticed that our data on that assessment was kind of low. So it was really kind of hard to digest. But I pulled this from our accountability report. So we're looking at last year's fourth grade, which is who we have now in fifth grade, and 75.4% were proficient or distinguished on milestones. So can they? Absolutely. So I just wanted to show you all this to just kind of keep us going, give us hope. Okay, so let's summarize the data. It's up here, and I want to get my thick black marker, excuse me. But we're going to summarize the data. So this data shows, and let's focus, we can really pull from all of it, but since we are talking specifically about determining meaning, what does the data show?
Students need more support with discovering the meaning of unknown words.
Okay. So let's keep talking. Tell me more. They need support. Let's talk about what it shows for the students. So the students, what? They need more support. The data shows they don't understand.
They need support connecting the context to the way the word's being used, or using context
Okay.
to determine the meaning of it. And I think some of them might partially know some of these words, like anxiously, maybe some pityingly, or whatever the other word was. Like they might know about pity, but don't really fully understand it. So,
Okay. So when we're thinking the data shows, and we're going to fill that in, the cause of this is. So we kind of want to name the problem here. So instead of saying they need support, how else could we say that?
The student shows the students don't understand the meaning of unknown words.
Students do not understand.
Or how to discover the meaning of unknown words.
Good. How to discover the meaning of unknown words. cause of this is?
Hard to say. You said you were teaching it today. Is that the first go through with a mini lesson like that where they're working on that skill?
Not using
No.
context clues
This
correctly.
explicitly, though, I think yes.
Explicitly?
I think sometimes as teachers we take it for granted that they can figure out the meaning,
Okay.
but I think if today was just your first
Right.
use of a strategy, then it's clear that they haven't had enough.
Okay, because of this is a lack of
Understanding of how to use context clues correctly.
a lack of understanding of how to
Or use it, yeah.
use the context clues and strategies. Strategies correctly, effectively.
Even on their social studies test today, there was a question where it was like, how is this person's rights being protected or violated? And a lot of kids came and asked me, what does violated mean? And I was like, really, they should be able to use that word "or" and know that it's the opposite, you know, or it's not the same as being protected.
I had students doing the same thing in my
So,
class.
you know, I can see that carrying over into test taking skills and other subject areas.
Right. That's good. So this work will help
Yeah.
in a lot of areas.
Definitely.
So now we're going to move into the student goal setting. Oh, no. Before we do, I want us to align it with our standard of focus. And since we are talking about determining the meaning, just really quick, let's just overview our standard. The whole standard says determine the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in a context, including figurative language such as metaphors and similes. And I think what we're finding from the work that we're doing and the assessments is that it's not just figurative language.
That's
It's
what they were
words in
actually
general.
like the journals that we were looking at were really decoding figurative language very well. So
Yes.
it wasn't
Yes.
that. It was words.
Yes. And students do have experience with similes and metaphors, so that's probably why there's a the increased understanding with that. So this is a really key piece, and I want us to think about this as we're setting a goal for the students, is they must self-monitor their reading and recognize when they come across a difficult word. So can you guys kind of talk, have you seen any of this, like a lack of that word or anything like that in class where we can kind
I
of
think
keep
what
that
she
in
said
mind?
was the
That
perfect
was
example because they were like, it was several words, you know, in social studies they're asking like, what does this mean? I don't know what this means.
And they just happened to come to me with that word, but how many words
Yeah,
did they
that
read through that they didn't come to me on?
Yes.
Like how they don't show me their thinking except
Right.
for one student who really puts question marks by things he doesn't understand, but most of the kids, they probably just flew
Just
through
keep
a lot
going.
of those words.
We talked about that today, and some of them were like, I don't know, I know all the words. And I was like, do you? And then I started looking, I was like, do you know what that word means? And they really didn't, so I think it's that self-monitoring piece.
I don't
needs
even
some
realize that
support.
sometimes when I create the test until I'm reading it aloud to the kids, the special ed kids, and I'm like, whoa, like that's a hard, sentence to decode or a hard phrase,
Right.
or that's really complicated the way that SchoolNet worded that, or you know where I got the test questions from.
Maybe like a process or at least even like questions that they can ask to help like understand what the meaning of the word is.
Right, and building that self-monitoring. Okay, so their background knowledge, I told you guys that they have some experience with similes and metaphors, and that non-literal versus literal language. And so we're working on using that background within context this year. So, misconceptions. I'm just going to give you a second to read this, and then I want us to talk about it. What are some kind of ahas that you see?
It's mostly about figurative language, but it says the skills are not taught in isolation, but embedded in an analysis of the text.
Right.
Which, kind of brings back the conversation Medina and I had, like, they might not have known what pityingly means, but they weren't really looking, like, around the text, not just the phrase, but, like, thinking about the meaning in the text itself to help them with that word.
Right. Right.
I think even some students will not recognize it due to lack of background knowledge. Like, and we have some EL students, and looking at that, I mean, they don't understand because they don't get, like Keck in Home of the Brave, we talk about all the time the way he talks because he doesn't get it,
Y'all okay?
We're good.
Need anything?
Thank you.
All right, holler at me.
Thanks.
Miss Phillips isn't looking at me. Is she okay? Is she making faces?
Thumbs up. 2 thumbs up.
Yes. So I agree with you with the EL students. And I love that because sometimes there's a lot of things as teachers we take for granted, and that's one of them, that because we were born and raised here, that we assume that everybody knows when we say, it's raining cats and dogs. We're not literally looking for those items to fall from the sky. Okay, so now that we know our goal, or now that we know our standard, and we have looked at the student data, and we know that the cause of their or their lack of understanding to discover the meaning of unknown words, we're going to create a goal. But to do this, we're going to make a list of student actions. So the big question is, what exactly will the students be doing when they are discovering the meaning of unknown words? What exactly will we see?
They need to go through, like, a learned process. Like, they need to be taught
strategy
or a process. And so they know exactly to use that strategy or process.
And how does this look? Like, when we walk in the room, what does that look like? I mean, we're not talking a specific strategy or process, but what kinds of resources do we want them to have?
Passage,
Text.
A text. Yeah, they need a text.
And maybe, like, we want them to have more rigorous text because that's where they're struggling is with some of those more difficult words.
Very good.
I don't know. Like, I'm thinking, this just reminded me, in Unit 2 of Lucy, they actually get text complexity cards, and there's so many strategies. It's like, what happens when you get, like, this is the...
That's right.
Remember? Something
Yes.
like that. I don't know if we can pull that in even earlier than when we even teach that lesson.
So utilizing,
Yeah.
I'm going to put the cards.
Mhm.
Very good. So we can walk in and we obviously see that there's going to be a complex text, a strategy of some kind, whether it's the cards or that, and then they'll most likely have their journal so they can write down their thinking. So let's talk more about this strategy. What do we want the students to do? So we've walked in, we see what they're doing. Now we're zooming in. What are we watching them do?
Maybe going back to where they're self-monitoring, maybe some kind of like annotating like where they don't understand.
Right.
Or what words are
Like
cloudy.
circling a word that might, like,
Yeah. I used to have my kids draw
Bubble,
cloud.
yeah.
Bubble for cloudy words that weren't very clear. So and that helps kids that
Right.
think they know everything too. Like you may know it, but it's not
Right.
100% clear.
Really good. What else would we watch them do?
Use the strategy, whatever strategy we're going to teach, like whether that's finding that, what they're struggling with on their card and then somehow like writing about the reading to prove that they are going through using that strategy to identify what the word
Organized.
Yeah,
I don't know.
let's- Let's look at some of our opportunities. We have exact text evidence, which would be our context clues. We have word parts. We have connections with parts of speech. Can we somehow tie this into what we would see? What would that look
Well, I
like?
think like what Karen was saying, maybe come up with something, because they did awesome. Like we both said, they did really well with the phrases. So coming up with something for them to track that process in their journal, like a this chart right here.
Or even think for like mini lessons, like if we're going to use those complexity cards,
Mhm.
modeling
Mm-hmm.
what those like it looks
Right.
like for those different strategies, so that then they can like maybe we model and use a graphic organizer to organize our
Mhm.
thinking, and then the students then understand what to do when they're on their own. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to put that over here for what the teacher is doing. So they're going to track their thinking through some kind of graphic organizer. Okay.
I would want to see them identifying part of speech in the sentence to help them get a clear meaning, what type of word they're looking for.
Mhm.
And you've been doing that work with mentor sentences, so they should be able
Very
to.
much so,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so now looking at this, let's create the goal for the students. So the students will
They will self-monitor and annotate their thinking when they
Why
come
we
to an
say-
unknown
Mhm.
word.
And use a strategy
Yeah.
to determine the meaning.
Yeah.
they will self-monitor their thinking.
When they come to an unknown word.
Thank you.
And then Karen, I'm going to say use a strategy
To
to
use a strategy to help
determine the meaning.
determine the meaning.
By using
No, and then use.
By using a strategy to determine the meaning. So like whether it's the text complexity cards or
by using a strategy. And we did name what some of those were, so I'm going to put just a context clues, parts of speech,
Questioning.
questioning,
Parts of the word,
yes.
root words.
And then I'll just put graphic organizer for that.
In the card.
Yes. Yeah, I'm reviewing.
But those probably all fall on that card. So
Yes. Okay. So our student goal is the students will self-monitor their thinking when they come to an unknown word by using a strategy such as context clues, parts of speech, parts of the word, questioning, graphic organizers, and those complexity cards. So looking at our goal, just very quickly, does it align with the standard?
self-monitor is the first thing that stood out to me. Determine the meaning of words. Difficult word or phrase when they come across that.
So it definitely does.
Yeah.
It does align. Okay, so let's look at the teacher. What will the teacher be doing? What will the teacher be doing to help students master or reach their goal?
modeling.
Yeah, modeling.
Modeling.
Using that graphic organizer along with the text complexity card. So modeling, I would think modeling each day using a
Right.
different
Yeah.
strategy that are common, strategies used to figure out unknown words.
Daily strategy, mini lessons. Okay. Once
Maybe coaching, individual
I
conferring and
was just
coaching.
kind of thinking like that gradual release, like what would we be doing even during the active engagement, and we would be coaching.
And monitoring. to
How would
see-
we be coaching? What kinds of,
I
let's
think-
think quality plus teaching
I think
strategies.
coming up with purposeful questions
Questioning.
beforehand, so that when you're monitoring students working, that you're able to have a list of questions to prompt their thinking.
Yes, purposeful questioning. What else? They also have vocabulary strategies in our Quality Plus teaching strategies. We might want to have a few of those tucked away as teachers so that when we're coaching, we can support that. Any other things? And I think the coaching kind of goes for after the I do, it really goes for the we do and you do. Do you guys feel that way? Okay. So, what up here kind of makes you feel like, ooh, I want to grow some? I need to look into that a little bit more.
Maybe more rigorous questioning, like looking. I mean, we're always questioning, but making sure it's, deep enough for them to.
Okay.
I needed to sneeze.
Okay. I'm like, don't cry, we're almost done. Okay, just checking. Okay, rigorous questioning. I feel like I need more work with vocabulary. I know that is a strategy, but I don't have a lot of tools tucked away. And so I'd like to do some learning with that. Okay. What about you guys? Karen, Brittany?
Just like seeing how a strategy would be modeled for the students' learning,
Okay.
so I know that I'm modeling it correctly.
Okay.
I can't think of anything different.
Okay. What can I write your name next to?
I think questioning for me would probably be the right.
All right. So we will do some more work with this learning, and as we plan for CQI next week, so that we can all be prepared. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Good deep dive. Okay. Now we can move into our plan.